Okay. Should I begin?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I request you all to have your cameras on all the time during the class, please. Okay. And feel free to raise your hand if you have any question, uh, or if you want to comment or interrupt. That is perfectly fine. Hadi has just joined us. Let him join. Hadi, bete, can you listen? Can you hear me? Hadi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hadi, please turn on your camera and keep your camera on all the time during the class. ठीक है?
Okay, ma'am. 2 minute. बस
So
मुंह हाथ धोना पड़ेगा.
sure, take your time. And can you see my screen? I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. So let's get started. Today we will learn political economy theory, which is another critical theory. So far we have been learning critical theories. We began with Marxist theory. We also learned what is a critical theory. We talked about its strengths and weaknesses. And the next critical theory that we are going to talk about today is political economy theory. Now, uh, before we start discussing what is political economy, it is very important for us to understand neo-Marxists. However, let me ask you just a question. Let me ask you a question related to your. That's okay, Bilal, if your internet is not stable. However, as soon as it gets stable, you can try turning on your camera. uh, about Marxist theory, and we have discussed it in detail already. Today, before discussing political economy theory, we'll first talk about neo-Marxist. Let me ask your understanding about base, the ideas of base and superstructure from Marxist theory. What is base for Marx? Base, can anyone explain? Ji, Misha, go ahead, please. You raise your hand.
Ma'am, it is any source of production, for example, land, factory, etc. And superstructure is basically the culture of any given society.
Shabash, good job, Misha. So, in Marxist theory, base is very important for control. And he argued that those who control the base can also control superstructure and ideology. With that, somebody wrote a message. Base is land factories, Shabash. Marx argued that those who control base have the tendency to control superstructure and ideology as well. We are clear about this, right? However, neo-Marxists, now let's learn who were neo-Marxists. They were influenced by Marx, first of all. They developed their ideas on Marxism. However, they deviated from Marxism. I'll write the word in the chat box. Neo-Marxists deviated from Marx. Deviate means they sort of had a different opinion. Marx says that proletariats, who are actually workers, they need to control base, and the control of superstructure and ideology will follow. However, neo-Marxists, they deviate in the sense that superstructure is also important. You can also exercise control by superstructure. It's not only just base that controls. Superstructure also has its importance, and you can also bring change or revolution uh, through superstructure or through ideology. So this is how neo-Marxists are different from Marxists. Is this clear to everyone? Any questions
Yeah.
about this? Okay, good. Ahmed Bete, will you please quickly revise what I just said? How are neo-Marxists different from Marxist scholars? Ahmed Altaf.
Yes, ma'am.
How are neo-Marxists different from Marx? I just explained this. Misha, will you quickly revise what I just said? Ji,
Yes, ma'am.
Ji.
Ma'am, neo-Marxists are basically those who have actually their base on what Marxist theory is, but they kind of add or uh, disagree or have their own findings within Marxist theory, while Marxists are those who actually believe in the actual Marxist theory as it is.
Okay, very good. What
Ma'am, you did the best thing by questioning me. Now I'm fully active now.
Yeah, I knew you were not. Okay.
Ma'am, that is the disadvantage of online classes, to be honest.
You need to be active. Do not take them too light. Hadi, did you understand the difference between Marxists and neo-Marxists?
मैं भी आया हूँ माइक ऑन किया मुंह हाथ धो के आया हूँ
Okay. Heather, will you please explain, Misha, what you have said about Marxists? That is absolutely fine. However, I am not sure if you have understood neo-Marxists. Can you
Ma'am,
say, Gigi, go ahead.
बेसिकली न्यो मार्क्सिस्ट जो है वो मार्क्सिस्ट थ्योरी ही पे बिलीव करते हैं, लेकिन उसके अंदर अपनी उनके कुछ डिसएग्रीमेंट्स या अपनी एडिशंस भी होती हैं, लेकिन उनकी बेसिस मार्क्सिस्ट थ्योरी ही होती है.
शाबाश, ये तो ठीक है, but what is that difference? Okay, now everyone just pay attention to what I am saying. I am explaining this point, difference between Marxists and neo-Marxists. I am explaining this point, and I am going to write things in the chat box, and from there you can further follow. First of all, there are three main things in Marxist theory. I am going to write them in the chat box. All right, I just wrote them in the chat box. Can everyone see what I wrote?
Yes, ma'am.
What did I write, Hadi? Three main things in Marx, according to Marx. What are those? Hadi, I'm
मैम yeah base superstructure and ideology
very good. What is superstructure? What is superstructure? Ahmed,
to
जी चलें, हादी आप बता दें. What is superstructure?
to my understanding superstructure is a structure that that engulfs all the things like the government, the bureaucracy, and all everything within it, the constitution, everything.
Okay.
I think
नहीं बेटे, that is focus and understand. Superstructure, according to Marx, is culture. He names superstructure as he names culture as superstructure. Superstructure is a country's culture. For example, education. For example, religion. For example, media. Media is also superstructure. What we are seeing in our media, dramas on anarkali, and what we are seeing, and songs on Basant, songs on what's that called, Vasak, which is Pakistan's harvest culture. That is superstructure. Our education is superstructure. Religious beliefs are superstructure. To Marx, superstructure is culture. Now, these three things, first of all, in classical Marxism, Marx believed that one needs to control base. Base is mean of production, like Misha just explained. For example, labor, factories, land, that is all base. Marx believed to have a control over society, one should have a control over base. And to bring revolution, control the base, and the control of superstructure and ideology will follow. Does it all make sense? Does it
Yes,
all
ma'am.
make
Yes,
sense?
ma'am.
Okay. Now
मैम
let
क्या हम ये भी कह सकते हैं कि एक्सटेंशन होती है? This is the extension of our culture.
what is the extent?
Superstructure जो है. Superstructure.
Yes, yes. Whatever comes from culture is superstructure. Okay. Whatever comes from culture is superstructure.
Okay, ma'am.
All right. Now this is Marxist ideology. And Marx was a critical scholar. He talks about revolution, and he says that to bring revolution, control the base, and the control of superstructure and ideology will automatically follow. Now, how are neo-Marxists different from Marxists? We call them neo-Marxists, first of all, because they are influenced from Marx, and they also developed their ideas on what Marx said. However, they differ from Marx. And where do they differ? Where do they deviate? Let me explain. Unlike Marx, who says that one should control base and control of superstructure ideology will follow, neo-Marxists believe that it's not important to control base only. The control can also come from superstructure, which is culture. The control can also come from ideology. So it's not just base. Marx emphasizes base a lot. However, neo-Marxists, they emphasize superstructure and ideology more than base. This is how these two are different. Now, does this all make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, can you explain the control part? Like control the superstructure and ideology, how to control? I mean,
Control,
Control.
by control, I mean, Marx talks about revolution. Marx talks about change. Control means to bring revolution. So for example, first of all, Marx talks about inequalities. And that is how he's a critical theorist. He's a critical scholar. He says, and who are proletariats, Hadi? Who are proletariats? What is the meaning of proletariats?
I don't remember, but maybe the loyalists.
No. I'm writing it in the chat box. Proletariats.
Average people, ma'am.
Workers. Sorry. What did you say?
Workers. Average class, middle class.
Yes. Proletariats are workers.
Average worker class.
Yes. Proletariats are workers. And base is controlled by people who have capital. By capital, I mean money. Base, the person who owns factory has the capital. He has mean of production. The person who owns land, he also has capital. He has mean of production. This is inequality. This is hierarchy. There are those who control means of production. There are those who just work. They do not own anything. They are workers. All right. Now, Marx talks about revolution. He says that there needs to be a revolution, and that revolution will come through proletariats. They need to challenge the ones who control the base. And those who, you were asking me about what do I mean by control? By control, okay, let me ask. If I own a media house, let's say I have by media house, I mean I have all kinds of media. I run a TV channel, I publish in newspaper, I publish weekly magazines, I also make movies, I have a production house. So I mean don't I have the base? I have means of production, and my workers, journalists, they are my workers, they are proletariats. Cannot they be controlled by me because I am the one who own the media house? Can't they be? If I prohibit them, or if I forbid them to publish a news story, can they still publish? Hadi, does it all make sense now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So that's what Marx said. He said that to bring a change, proletariats need to control the base. And this is how the control of superstructure and ideology will follow. However, neo-Marxists were of the view that to bring the change, it's not only just base that one needs to control. It can also be controlled through superstructure and ideology. This is how Marxists are different from neo-Marxists. All right, I have spent way too much time in explaining the difference between the two. There are two main strands of neo-Marxists: cultural theorists, culture and political economy theorists. And today we are going to learn political economy theory. We already learned about cultural theories. A cultural theorist believe that it is very important to study culture because culture is main informing body for production of media. Stuart Hall is one of cultural theorists. I'll write his name in the chat box. I am talking about Stuart Hall. He is the same person who proposed encoding and decoding. Heather just wrote a question. What is the end goal of neo-Marxists? Neo-Marxists, I'm not sure what you mean by end goal, but talking about their difference, unlike Marx, they do not emphasize base a lot. Instead, they emphasize superstructure and ideology. Marx says that just control means of production and you will control everything. They say that change comes from culture. And I can give you the example as well. Okay, I will give you.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Can I interrupt for a second? I'm sorry. So what I wanted to ask you that by the end goal, I mean that are they changing the ideology, the neo-Marxists?
Both are better critical scholars. They both want change.
Okay.
Both.
Through ideology.
Yes. They want change through ideology, through superstructure, through culture. I will give you the example of Aurat March. The proponents, by proponents, I mean supporters. Supporters of Aurat March, do they have base? Do they own anything, any media house or any factory or any production house? They do not. They are only raising ideology. Let's say ideology of gender equality. They want to bring a change in superstructure. By superstructure, we mean culture. And this is what neo-Marxists believe. Marx's opinion was way too materialistic. He talked about change in materialistic terms. However, neo-Marxists, they believe that change can also come through superstructure. I also gave the example of song Alu Ande by Pakistani music band. Its name is Begairat Brigade. Please raise your hands. How many of you know about this music band, Begairat Brigade? Hadi does. Let me see. Hadi does, Hubab does, and Misha does. So they are also trying to bring a change through superstructure, through music, through song, through media. And media is what Marx calls superstructure. Any more questions? Any further questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Hasib, does this all make sense for you, Bede?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. There are two main. Okay, first I spent my time explaining the difference between Marxists and neo-Marxists. Now I really worked hard in explaining this difference to you, and I believe you all should be clear about how these two are different from each other. And then neo-Marxists, they have two further strands: cultural theorists and political economy theorists. Their difference mainly is, I will talk about that in the coming slides. Let's move to let's see what we have in the next slide. So what is political economy theory? Political economy theorists, they study elite control of economic institutions such as banks, stock markets, and then show how this control affects other social institutions, including the mass media. Let me explain this now. I think I can explain it better with the help of an example. How many of you know who is the owner of Pakistani TV channel and news network Bol?
Shoaib Sheikh.
Yes, Shoaib Ahmed Sheikh. Very good. He was also he was also owner of this company Exact. Later, a scandal was unfolded related to that company. But if you look at, I invite you to do some research on this TV channel and especially the owner, and you will come to know he is essentially a businessman. And establishing this TV network for him is actually expanding his business. Now, we expect media to perform public service, right? I mean, it's media's job to serve people, to inform them, to educate them, but to entertain them. But can we expect media to perform that public service function in a way? I mean, can we expect them to perform this function to the fullest when they have their own commercial interests?
No, ma'am.
Good. And yeah, and why not, Hadi?
Because, ma'am, they might have agendas for their own benefits.
Shabash, very good, very good. Because they may have their own agendas. So if there is, I can also give examples from programs. I'll not name any program, but we have seen programs on TV where the way they discuss political issues or countries' important security issues is they discuss them in talk shows that are structured in a way that the host sits with a bunch of comedians, right? There is a host, and then there are a bunch of comedians, and they bring up an issue which is important nationally or politically, and then they try to make fun out of it. Now, yeah, I mean, there are many other programs like that. Okay, there are programs in international media as well where they actually where they sort of make fun of politicians, and they sort of make fun of political issues, national issues. But the thing is, with that, media should also have the responsibility of uplifting people's tastes. And that, to me, and your opinion can definitely be different from mine. To me, I think one of media's jobs is definitely to raise people's tastes, to uplift their tastes. And it is okay to discuss serious issues in light ways. However, I mean, I find this sort of presentation problematic, because we are not actually, now these many people watch these programs for entertainment, not for information. And the biggest concern for these for the producers of these programs is to make money. I mean, their profit motives, their commercial motives are more important than their public service motives. Does it all make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Now we can understand this better. These theorists, they study elite control of economic institutions such as banks and stock markets, and then show how this control affects many other social institutions, including when media is controlled by businessmen, or when media is run by businessmen, then their job is mainly driven by their commercial motives, not by their public service motive. And that's what political economy theorists are troubled with. I'm running out of time. I have only 9 minutes left.
Ma'am, they are actually concerned with their own personal interest. Instead of, spreading some, important information to the people, they just want to earn money through advertisement.
Shabash, good job. and they want ratings. Maybe ratings is all that they want. So political economy, like ones who controls economy, they also become politically important, and then they decide what is going to be on air. I gave you the example of bowl. In the next class, I would like you to come up with examples from some more examples from other Pakistani media conglomerates, media corporations. When media works like a corporation, it's not serving public. I mean, media has this public service. Has this public service element. They should have this public service element. However, what happens is their money making endeavors, they kind of supersede their public service endeavors.
Ma'am, one of the example is of AIY News. If you look at the Salman Iqbal, he owns Karachi Kings as well. So he mainly advertises his franchise on the TV channel and also supports the government motive instead of, telling people the truth, what is going on in the country.
Shabash, very good. Rohama, bete, do you have any question? Huba, I believe all of this was helpful for you. Khadija, Heather, any question, bete?
No, ma'am.
I have a
No,
question.
ma'am.
Gigi, sure, Heather.
My question is that why don't we have the online class till 9:50? Like you said, there are only 9 minutes left.
Yeah, we do have class, and for this session. I was going to do your attendance in the next session. I would request you to join the class by hitting the same link. I was going to do this announcement. So you will hit the same link and come back, and then I will do your attendance. If when we run out of time for this class. Okay? Heather, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. A couple more people are joining. In certain, sorry, this is a typo mistake. Let me fix it. All right. In certain respects, political economists, they accept the classist Marxist assumption that the base dominates the superstructure. So although they are neo-Marxists, their thoughts are highly aligned with classic Marxism, that base, those who actually control economy, those who control means of production, they have the power to exercise their control over other segments of society. This is difference. I told you there are two main strands of neo-Marxists. There are cultural theorists, and then there are political economy theorists. Cultural theorists are the ones who emphasize more on culture and superstructure, what Marx calls superstructure. However, a political economy theorists, their thoughts are more sort of aligned with classic Marxism, and they believe that those who control capital, those who control means of production, those who have economic gains and economic interests, they have the power of manipulation. Again, time is running out. I have 5 more minutes for this session. When I say 5 more minutes, I mean 5 more minutes of recording. I will not be recording the next session. I will, after the class ends, I will request you to join using the same link. And in that session, I'll do only your attendance, and I will take your questions related to the content. All right. So because I cannot do multiple recordings. After this session ends, I will not be recording it again. I will keep my lecture only for the first 40 minutes, and that and then afterwards I will use that time for attendance and for taking your questions. All right, let's talk about the focus of political economy theorists. Their focus is on how the processes of content production and distribution are economically and industrially constrained. This is, I would again like to give the example of talk shows. Majority Pakistani talk shows, their content is constrained by their economic concerns. If again, I was at a conference where majority journalists were participating, and the conference was to train young journalists. And there I met a famous Pakistani talk show host. His name is Iftikhar Chaudhary. And Iftikhar Chaudhary, he used to host this show, Jawab De. Its English translation would be Give Answers. And Iftikhar Chaudhary is also famous for his aggressive style. And I asked him this question that many times we don't feel any substance in your program. It's like you only lash out at your guests, majority politicians, and we don't see any substance that actually gives people a food for thought or any solid thinking. And his answer was, my editor and my producer wants the rating of the program. More rating brings him more advertisements, which means more rating brings him more money. So what do I do here? So this is this is what is the concern of political economy theorists. This is my next slide. And these are their questions. These are the questions that they address. Why do some forms of culture dominate primetime television schedules, whereas other forms are absent? We see many talk shows, even famous talk shows, being broadcast during primetime television. Why is that? So that some forms dominate than others. We see very little content that is that provides any substance to audience, that provides a real thinking material. Does audience taste alone explain those differences, or can other less obvious reasons be linked to the interests of economic institutions? And it's not, I mean, I have also seen, I just gave you the example of my encounter with Iftikhar Chaudhary, and he was talking about more ratings. And they say, yes, that's what people want. I mean, they want the people in Pakistan, majority like those kind of programs where they see people confronting each other, where they see people fighting with each other. But doesn't media have the responsibility of raising people's tastes? I mean, raising the standards of their thinking, and media doesn't seem to take that responsibility. These are all questions that are addressed by political economy theorists. 1 more minute is left for the recording. Political economy theorists their emphasis. They criticize growing privatization of media. They criticize the decline of public service media institutions. Again, they criticize that media seems to have its economic motives, its profit motives. They do not seem to have any public service motive. And they also criticize centralization of media ownership. Centralization means like single parent organization. At the same time, they publish newspaper. At the same time, they run a radio channel, they run a TV channel, they make movies and many other things. Now, my time has run out for this session, and I was recording it. For the next session, I request you to join by using the same link. However, I will not do the recording. I'll only take your questions. All right. Thank you. Let's join again. I'm going to end this session. You can join again.